Hi, I'm Richard Esteb. I have been a cabinet maker for a long time. I am a Sun City resident for the last 9 months. Okay, we moved in last year. Love this shop, and I wanted to give back some of my experience to people who might not have the experience that I have. When I was in my 20s, I signed up for being a journeyman or being a cabinet maker and went through an apprenticeship program, a formal apprenticeship program, and at the end of that became a licensed, or not licensed, became a journeyman cabinet maker. And soon after that, I started my own company, and I did all kinds of specialty cabinet work, from standard kitchen stuff to curved handrails to interiors of boats where there's compound curves. I did it all. I loved it. I loved the process. Did a lot of furniture, did some sculpture as well. So that's my background. After 20-some years of cabinet making, I realized that I wanted to become an architect because I saw too much poor architecture that my nice cabinets were going in. So I became an architect. I went to school to get a degree in architecture and then studied for my exams and became a licensed architect in the early 2000s. And since then, I was practicing architecture, got invited to teach high school. So in the high school I taught wood shop. I did architecture and engineering for 10 years. Retired from that, and since then continued to practice architecture then, and I still do now. So I'm still practicing architecture. I am not retired, only from teaching school. So the shop is my happy place. This is where I thrive. I love this shop. I wish there was more storage space, but I love this shop. So I wanted to give back to the shop community, the club, some of my experience as cabinet making so that someone can actually understand how cabinets are built and how they are built efficiently as opposed to struggling with how do you do certain joints. So I intend on this class, the first class that we're going to teach here, is about upper cabinets. So they're the simplest of cabinets because it's simply a box with a back, adjustable shelves, and a door. I want to do two different styles of cabinets. One is frameless and one is with a face frame. So the face frame cabinet will have a panel door, and the non-face frame cabinet will have a slab door. And we'll talk about edging, we'll talk about adjustable shelves, joinery, and grain patterns of wood, and hinges, and the like. So that's kind of the nutshell this first class is going to be. So tonight we're going to be looking at building and actually laying out two different cabinets. Same size cabinets, but two different styles of cabinets. One is a face frame, which is a lot of what you see in the cabinets around here in Sun City. Their face frames they're the side of the cabinet here and a piece of wood on the front of it, and then a door overlaps with a panel door. In fact, there's a panel door right there. So we're going to do that type, and we're also going to do a European style, where it's frameless, so there's no face frame. The hinges and everything mount right on the sides of the cabinet, and the doors hit up against it. Frameless gives you more room inside the cabinet. So we're going to do both types. Some basic things we're going to try to accomplish is to get some understanding of how cabinets are with the grain of the wood, as an example, and what kind of joinery we use. I did some sample joints so we can start seeing how things are done. Typically, grain patterns go vertical on a cabinet or in woodworking. So if you had a panel that fits inside of a frame, even if it's a long frame this way and very short, the grain of the panel goes up and down. The frame itself is called a rail that goes horizontal and stiles going vertical. Vertical would be just the grain of the wood going vertical, the stiles are horizontal. So it's kind of just a basic sort of cabinet layout. If you're doing just plywood cabinets, typically the grain goes vertical, doors, everything else. I have seen lately drawers are starting to go horizontal. It's sort of a new feature. You know, they always change things. So I think that what I'm intending on doing here is paint grade cabinets. I looked around here, every cabinet in here is painted, so we'll just do a paint grade cabinet, which allows us to do some face nailing on where the top hits the side. We can just nail in there, as opposed to if it was a finished, like an oak cabinet, you might just glue and clamp those instead of nailing them, or nail them putty. But we're going to do a little more on the rough side, but you get the idea of how we're going to do this. I have a couple different hinge styles. I want to show you that because that has to do with how we lay things out as to what hardware we're going to use. There's also, this is like, I don't know how many, 100 years old kind of technology for adjustable shelves. So I have some of these. One cabinet will do this, and one cabinet will drill the holes every inch or whatever pattern we want. So there'll be both two types of stuff there to do just for fun of doing it. So let's first start off with some joinery, because I think that's going to help us to understand how we lay things out. This afternoon I did some samples here. So this is a typical dado, and when it's on the middle of a board, regardless, it's a dado. If it's across the grain, it's called a dado. If it's in with the grain, it's usually called a groove. Still a dado, but they call it a groove. Anyway, I just call them dados, all dados. Doesn't matter which direction it's going. If it's at the edge of a board, it's called a rabbet. And that's not like a bunny rabbit, it's a R-A-B-B-E-T. Okay? So the typical joinery is like that. So you have a top of the cabinet, and you have a side of a cabinet. Okay? Or you do this, and if your dado is just the right size, of course you fit this in really nice and tight, and that's a much stronger joint. It's not that strong. It's stronger than without any joinery. We have a dado set up for the table saw, and what I did today was I did 5 different dados. Okay, we have 5 blades, 2 blades on the outside and 3 in the middle, and we can go over that when the time comes to dado. And total all those 3 together is 5/8. That's this one here. And our wood doesn't fit in that because our wood is not 3/4, but it's called 3/4 plywood. So this next groove, and I've labeled these, they have 1 spacer. The next one has 2 spacers, and 3 spacers, and 4 spacers. So we can start seeing the size. So the 5/8 doesn't fit. Happens to be that this track is 5/8, it fits nicely. So when we get to the shelving, adjustable shelving, we'll deal with the 5/8 bit. But at each side it gets a little bit bigger until it gets just right. And it's okay to be a little sloppy if you want, but it's nice. We have some of these shims are 1/100th or 3/100ths of an inch or something, 3/10ths of an inch. And so they're, or hundreds, I don't know what they are, but they're very, very thin. Okay, so that you can really fine tune and adjust exactly what it is. I made this for myself so that when I get some plywood, I can go, hey, what size do I put? And then I already know what it is. So it's handy to have. We probably should have one for the shop in general, but with time. Okay. So, and then the other thing that we have is the way that cabinet backs are put on a cabinet. Okay? So, I made 2 rabbets on this piece of wood. And the idea is that if this is the side of the cabinet and this is the back that fits on, you have a recess so that the back of the cabinet is flush. So if it's wall mounted, you just plug it in, it's tight against the wall. And if you are high-end cabinets, like I used to build, we would leave a taller or deeper rabbet so that it extends past the back. And what that does is allows me to hold the cabinet up to the wall, and no wall is straight, and scribe that, cut it, put it back in, and it looks like it's a straight line because there are no gaps from the wall. So that's kind of 2 ways of doing it. I think for this class we'll probably just do it like that. Much easier, and just throw it up on a wall. It's a shop cabinet, so it's fine. So those are the kind of basic joinery. And so when we're looking at a simple layout, I call this a layout stick, layout board, whatever. In construction, it's called a story pole. In cabinet work, we call it a layout board, I guess. And we basically start with, we want 3 views. We want the width, just left to right. We want the height. I put them all on one board. You can intermix them if you know what you're doing after a bit of time, where you have the bottom and the top. And then somewhere in here you can put the front to the back. And you can overlap, it doesn't really matter. You can flip it over and say, okay, here's the back. Or here's the front to back dimensions, and here's the left to right, and here's the top to bottom. It doesn't matter how you do it, as long as you label them for yourself and you know what you're doing. So I'm going to start with the cabinet we're going to do is an upper cabinet, two upper cabinets. And I'm going to overlap the dimensions for these two, because there's two different kind of sizes on these things. I'm going to overlap them right on the same layout. So we're going to have to kind of get used to seeing which one we're looking at when we're looking at it. So please, if you have any questions while I'm doing this, just ask, stop, no big deal, okay?
When you mark the layout for two sets of dimensions, do you just rely on knowing, or do you have a way to indicate? Do you use different inks, like one color for vertical and another for horizontal, or do you use something on the marks to quickly draw your attention so you don't get confused?
I do it because usually in one set of cabinets they're all the same, right? But here we're doing a face frame and we're doing a frameless, so we're going to overlap them with all of them. Typically, when I went through my apprenticeship, we actually had color coded, because I was working at a big shop, and if someone was sick and someone had to take over, you'd better be able to look at their layout and understand it, just like
Yeah,
that.
that's
And so,
what I-
so everyone was. We had red and blue, colored pencils for that.
Yeah.
So different things meant different things. I don't even remember what they were now, but everyone had those three colors or something.
And did you ever use any indicators, like horizontal versus vertical, by some indication on them?
You can, if that's, if you wanted to.
Okay.
And again, it's I've been doing this for 40 years or so, and so for me, it's like I just have these habits that I've simplified to the point where I can make a mark and I understand what that is. But we have to be kind of universal at this stage.
That's why I'm asking, because
Well, and I'll, as we go through here, I'll explain some of the things that we do sort of typically to do. So let's just start first of all with left to right. And what I wanted to do is just do an 18-inch wide cabinet. Okay, so that's all we're going to look at is left to right. Okay, so let's first look at tools. Two squares. Okay, one is a machinist square that is square, or best as we can get to be square. And we have a tri-square or adjustable or combination square, which I never rely on as being square. I happen to say, well, that's pretty darn square, but I don't trust it necessarily for what we're trying to do here. So, but I use both of these. Okay, so we'll show them why. So first off, whatever tape measure you use for your layout, use for cutting your wood. Okay, because every tape measure is a little different, if it matters.
Great.
It's true. I use this brand because to me they're consistent. I have 6 of these. 3 at home, 2 at here, and whatever else, and they're very consistent. So I'm first going to say, if there's the total outside of the right hand side of the cabinet. Okay, there's sort of 0 level there, and I'm going to go 18 inches, and I make a mark. Okay, and this is just basic. Okay, and I go there. There's the left-hand side of this cabinet.
So that's the side, the vertical side.
This is the outside. If this were the cabinet, it's this part, right up there at 18 inches. And this side is right here at 18 inches.
So is that the side? Or-
No. I'm just indicating where the side's located.
Oh, okay.
This is 18 inches end to end total size, okay? And we work backwards. So if you notice this particular dado, or this dado, this rabbit dado, is on this 3/4 inch, I leave a 1/2 inch of material. And because this is not 3/4 inches, this depth is not 1/4 inch. It's 3/16 plus. Okay, so I will go through here and say, okay, so how thick is my plywood right here? Okay, and I'm actually going to draw 11/16 because that's typically what this is. It's not critical right now that it's that much. And then I'm going to show a little 1/2 inch space there. Okay, so now, I don't know if you can get this on a camera, but on this, I do a dashed line and a solid line. And you can come, if you want to come up and see it, it's probably more visible here. So this really is the edge of the cabinet out here. This is what's left of the side of the cabinet, and that is the dado depth. Meaning, there it is right there. If I put it on the outside, match it there, the inside where the dado or rabbit is right where that